Hi everyone, and welcome back to Waterhouse Forde. So it's been a couple of weeks, but we've now got the we've got the parts that we need for the rocket arm. We're going to bring you over in a minute and show you what we've got. Didn't quite work out according to plan. If you remember from our previous video, we needed to replace one of the adjustment screws for the rocket arm, for one of the rocket arms, and then we also talked about putting new bushes in. Sadly, we weren't able to get quite as many bushes as we hoped. So we require 16. You remember there's basically 2 bushes per finger. So that means, and obviously you've got 8 of those, so that means you need 16. We were only able to get 12. Actually, we got 13, but obviously the one extra doesn't really matter. So instead, what we've done is we've actually, instead of then buying the additional adjustment screw, what we've then done instead is bought 2 new fingers. So what that means is we only need the 12 bushes for the old fingers, if you see what I mean. The one thing, or the bad thing, downside I suppose, with putting new bushes in is that you have to ream them to fit the shaft as well. At least that's my expectation. So what we're going to do, we're going to bring you over in a minute, and we'll basically step through, show you what we've got, and step through what we need to do, and then we'll capture obviously some video along the way as we go. But essentially what we're hoping to achieve today is to get the rocket arm reassembled, and that's our objective. Okay?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so excuse me, as we said in the intro, we've got 2 new rocker fingers. Let's take those out. And hopefully you can see that there. We'll get them out of the plastic in a minute. Plastic is making a bit of glare on the picture there, but hopefully you can see that reasonably well. And obviously they come with a little adjustment screw, and indeed new nuts as well. And then of course, as I said, we've got the new bushes as well. So the
did they come from Anglo?
no, so unfortunately Anglo don't do these parts. They don't do anything for the rocket arm, so we had to get them elsewhere. Okay, now if we have a look here, this is number 7, is the one that had the damaged screw, right? Yeah. Now the thing is, these rockers actually work as pairs. You see, one is kind of straight and the other one is angling off to the right, as I'm holding it there now.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you look at the next 2, that's interesting. Yeah, so this one is again relatively straight and that one's angling off to the right, and so it goes, each pair as you go down. Now I'm hoping, and I believe what they've sent us, they should be a working pair as well. So let's open them up and see which one is which.
You can put them on my finger.
We're going to put them on the rod.
Okay.
Be a little bit. Well, then we can also check the bushes, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So there we go. Now if we look at those, they're the wrong way around. So that looks like, it should be like that, right? So we've got one sort of heading off to the left and one heading off to the right, kind of. So if we now put those on the shaft, make sure that they fit nicely, which they do.
So that one's going to be number 8, that one's going to be number 7.
That's the way it seems, yeah. But what we'll do, we'll put number 7 and number 8 on.
It's left its bush behind.
Oh man, these things are a pain. Okay. That one's a bit taut. It's a lot tighter than it should be, I'm not sure why. Okay, now if we put the new ones on,
which are nice and loose,
we can do a comparison. Just make sure that they look as similar as possible, if you see what I mean. Yeah?
Yep.
So we can see now the way we've got it now on the shaft, actually what's happening is number 8 is angling off to the left and number 7 a little bit off to the right. And if you look at the new ones, that one's ever so slightly to the right and that one's to the left. So that you know we've got a good match, and you're absolutely right, that's number 7 and that's number 8. So what we'll do is we will quickly punch the numbers into them so we know those are the two, that's the order that we want them to go in. And then what we'll do is carry on with putting the bushes into the rest of them, and these we'll put away for maybe another time. If I can get another replacement screw for this one, then I will basically refurbish that one and then we'll have 2 spares. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, we've obviously gone to the trouble of marking these 1, 2, 3 all the way up to 8, but in reality we really only needed to mark them as 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2,
yeah.
1, 2, because essentially they just work in pairs. But it's better to just put them all back the way they were,
yeah.
Which is what we're going to do.
So does that go from left to right or right to left, going upwards in numbers?
So this is number 1,
okay,
running up to number 8 this way. Okay?
Yeah.
Alright, so what we'll do is we'll quickly mark these so we know that that's the order in which they need to go, so we'll keep them in that order, and these 2 we will put away because they're no longer needed. Now I think this one that's tight, I think what's happened there, the bush came out and I pushed the bush back in and probably I've not got it straight. I remember now, the shaft is not symmetrical because remember number 4 pillar has the screw, right, which goes in there. So we know this side is number 4 on the pillar and number 7 and 8 on the rockers because of that hole that the screw screws into.
Yay for the holes.
So that's how you can tell.
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, so we'll get that sorted and then we'll come back once we've got all those bushes in, get them reamed, and in fact let's just quickly have a look and see how these bushes. The problem is you can see how they fit on the shaft, but actually once they're in the housing, in the actual finger, the dimension might change slightly anyway. But just as a test, we can see that's a nice fit, right?
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a gap there. That gap will be closed when it's in the housing, presumably.
Which will make it tighter.
Which will make it tight, and that's why we need to ream them. Okay?
Yep.
Alright, let's crack on with that, and then we'll come back. Okay, so I've done number 6 just as a bit of a trial run. I'm now working on number 5. So the first job we need to do is get the bushes out. Now as we know, some of them are a bit loose and they kind of come off when you push them onto the rod, so we'll try that first. Not that one. That one's not looking very happy, so we'll try and knock it out this way. It's starting to come, you can see, and there it is, it's off. So we'll take that one away, and that leaves us with obviously one inside there. So what we'll do is we'll just try and knock that out with a punch. Get a small punch here and just give that a little tap. They're not the easiest things to hold on to, these things, because they're so small. Yeah. So the other way to do it, you can actually see on this one where the split is. So another option is to take a basically a sharpened punch, but that's got a smooth back, if you see what I mean, and just gently tap that in to curl the bush. You can see what's happened to that one. It's basically curled around. And then what you can do is basically just grab a pair of pliers and pull the bush out like that. So that, but by curling it like that, you basically just take the tension off, and that allows it to come out. Now we're just clean inside there. You can see it's quite dirty. So we'll just give that a little clean. I'll get some petrol on that. Okay. Now, in order to help the bush go in, what we want to do, there is a chamfer on this edge here, on both edges. I'm just going to use a little multi-tool just to clean that chamfer up. And so hopefully now you can see you've got a nice smooth surface on that chamfer, and that will just allow the bush to go in nice, a little bit more easily. Right, we're going to go over to the press and just press the bushes in quickly. Okay, first thing we want to do is get a fair amount of oil on this thing. We want it to slip in nice and easily, so we put some oil on the rocker, put a bit of oil on the outside face of the bush. That should be plenty. Now, what I like to do is to put the slot up, and the only reason for that is so that I know where it is. So the slot is facing this oil hole here, and then basically you just push it in. So we'll just bring this down gently. Okay. There we go, there's our first one in. We'll flip it over and do the other one. So again, we just put some oil all around the outside edge. Line up the slot. There we go. And that's it. 2 bushes pressed in nicely, no issues with that. So we can head over to the bench now and ream them. Okay, we got the rocker now in the vase, nice and tight. We don't want it to move. First thing we want to do, check our shaft, right? So definitely not going to go in there, definitely too big. So we got this hand reamer now, and I've set it, I believe, to where it will just go in, but it'll start cutting. We definitely need oil. You want to put a lot of oil on this thing. And what I tend to do is basically oil each blade. And just gently go round in a clockwise direction. You want it to go as smoothly as possible. And you don't want to make big cuts, you want to take basically very thin shavings off. Okay, now we'll adjust the ream a quarter turn. And go again. And again. Quarter turn. And you just keep doing that, a quarter turn at a time. I explained how these reamers work in one of our previous videos, but basically you've got these 6 blades, and they basically chamfered, and the grooves that they run in are chamfered as well. And then you got these 2 nuts, and what you do to push these out, in other words to make them bigger, you pull this nut back and you bring that one in. The end of the blades are also chamfered to fit inside these nuts, so that when the nut tightens it basically pulls the blade in and keeps them all the same distance. It's a little bit crude, it's quite a manual task, and I'm not convinced that it gives you the best finish, but it's what I've got. I do think a high-speed ream on a drill press or even on a lathe or a mill would be the best way to go, but sadly I don't have those facilities. So every now and again you want to check your rod and just make sure that you still got a way to go. The closer you get, obviously the more frequently you'll check it. Okay, I'll just show you. I think I'm complete now, as in I've reamed it all the way out. That shaft now slides in nicely. You can see it pretty much runs in under its own weight, which is what we're after. So now what I'll do, I'll put this into, I've already blown it off with compressed air. What we want to do is make sure that that little hole isn't blocked up with any shaving, so we'll blow some compressed air in there. But actually what I'm going to do, I'm now just going to pop it with the other one in a tub of petrol, and then it can just sit there whilst I do the others, and then obviously at the end we'll clean all of them up to get them ready for reassembly. So there you go, that's how you do the reaming. It's as I say, not a very quick job, but quite satisfying when you get to the end. Right, I'm going to crack on with all the others. I've got another 4 to go, so we'll get those done and then we will start with the reassembly. Okay, we're now at the stage where we can start reassembling this shaft. So Oscar, what goes first, do you remember?
One of these?
No.
A spring?
No.
Okay.
So first of all we put the end cap on, just to get started. First thing is one of these, so you can pop that on. We're going backwards now, see? Right, then I believe we need a rocker. So this side is this is number 1, right? So we're going to pop.
Which way does it need to be? Does it matter?
No.
That way.
No. They turn all the way around, don't they?
Yeah, but you don't want it that way in the engine. So.
Doesn't matter, you can turn it around. So first of all, put some oil on.
Yeah, okay.
Just inside the bush.
All the way around.
That's fine, you can just twist it as you turn it on, yeah?
Okay.
Line it up, it's not lined up.
Okay.
There we go. Okay, so that goes all the way down.
Yeah. Then number 2.
Then I believe it's number 2, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We may get this wrong as we're going, we'll have to see if we remember, but I think number 1 and number 2, no, you see they're too close together, so there needs to be something in between them, okay? Now if we look on the shaft, we can see a rocker runs here, okay, you can see there's the hole there. The other rocker needs to be there, so there's something of that distance there, okay? Now,
is it one of these?
I don't think so. It might be. Yeah, because that's actually going to be like that. Yeah, okay, so put number 1 on.
Oh, this is number 4.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thought for a minute that was number 7.
Put some oil on.
Ah, my oil is leaking. Does this matter which way around?
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I believe the bolt goes this side.
So
that way, yeah.
okay.
I might be wrong, but we'll see.
So the bolt goes towards the screw and bolt and nut.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm just checking now. We might need to review the video when we took it apart.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do that quickly before we carry on. Otherwise we're going to have to undo it all. Okay, so that's the beauty of having all of this on video. Yes, that's right. So looking back at the video when we took it apart, we can see that the bolt on the pillar is on the same side as the adjustment bolts on the rockers. So, okay, so now we can go with number 2.
Yeah. And then a short spring after that.
Correct. Then we have a spring. The short. So there's 2 short ones and 1 long one. We know the long one goes in the middle. So
Yeah.
we can put one of the short ones on.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we have number 3 rocker.
Okay, I think that's number 3.
Give it some oil.
Okay. This was one of the less clearly stamped rockers.
Hmm. Okay.
There we go.
Then we have a pillar,
Now number
which will be
2.
number 2.
Put some oil on. Then we have rocker number 4 after this.
Mm-hmm.
And then the long spring. And then rocker number 4. And then the long spring.
Mm-hmm.
The long springy boy. And then number 5 rocker.
Mm-hmm.
Then number 3 pillar.
Correct.
Number 3 pillar. Then number 6 pillar. Rocker.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. And then short spring. Then our lovely new and stamped 7 rocker.
Hang on, I need to grab that rocker.
There you go.
Okay.
I can imagine this is a lot more difficult with one person.
I imagine it would be.
There we go.
Okay, now I need to bring that down to me so I can grab it.
Okay.
Okay. So now we've got number 4
Yes.
pillar. And we
then-
know that that needs to line up with that hole. So we can turn the shaft. Hang on.
Okay.
There. Okay.
A bit more oil in there. There we go. And that.
Yeah. So now you can take the little screw. No, hang on.
Oh, okay.
Get that little screw in that washer.
Yeah. I'm guessing the washer goes on like that.
Yeah.
With the crowns facing, the kind of crown bit facing over the nut.
It's heading towards the head, yeah.
Yep.
So we can pop that in there.
And then you don't have to hold anymore.
Correct.
There we go.
Okay.
Yay!
There we go.
And then number 8. Then the spring. And then the cap.
And then the cap, and then we'll put the pin in. Now we'll head over to the vase and put the pin in. We won't video that. Basically, it's straightforward, right? You line up the holes, knock the pin in, and make sure it comes out the other side. So we'll do that off camera, and then we'll come back. Okay. So we just went over to the vase and put the pin in. Now, one thing for the eagle-eyed amongst you, you might have noticed that we put that pillar on the wrong way around, so the bolt hole was on this side. We had to turn that around as well. Luckily we noticed it. Now the last job really is just to tighten that. Sorry, not the last job, but before we go any further, let's just make sure that this is nice and tight.
Yeah, that should be tight enough.
We don't want that coming out. Not that there's a huge amount of pressure on it, but still. Okay, so the last job really just is to put the adjustment screws in. Obviously the 2 new ones have their adjustment screws already. But yeah, so Oscar, if you pop a little bit of oil on there. Come on. And then you can turn that one in there for me.
Okay.
And then I'll start this end and we can just work from either end.
Yeah. So they don't need to go all the way in. As in like.
No, just roughly halfway, and then you
Ooh,
put a lock nut
This
on.
has gotten tight.
Okay, get a flat screwdriver.
Okay.
Now, whilst I was cleaning all of these rocker arms, I did just run a tap through all of them. The threads are clean, but these are still quite tight. You don't really want them to be loose because obviously you want them to be nice and firm anyway, so I didn't want to loosen it too much. I just made sure that the threads are clean. Okay, so you can use that to turn it in.
Ah.
And of course we've got one screw spare because obviously our having replaced we had to replace 2 new arms and they came with each came with their own screws. Right, so you can turn all of those in with a screwdriver now.
Yeah. So why aren't there 2 spares? Oh, because
the other
one was stuck.
Yeah, the other one is still on the rocker arm. Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
And then we just put a lock nut onto each one. As I said in the beginning of this video, I've cleaned up all the nuts. What that means is I've basically taken off all the burrs, so when people have a spanner on here and the spanner slips, it basically makes a little burr on each corner. So I've taken all of those off, they're nice and flat now. And then I've just touched up each face. Sorry, you can't see me, hang on. So let's try that again. So yeah, as I say, on each of these corners you land up with a little burr sticking up. So I've taken those off, and then I've just touched off each face where the spanner goes, just to make them nice and square again, or hexagonal actually. But do you want to swap over?
Yeah. Instead of reaching in front of the camera.
So again, you can still see which way around the nut went. You can still see the marks underneath where it was touching off on the rocker. So we're going to put them back that way.
Ah, this is a tough one.
They get a bit easier as you go.
Yeah, it's just gotten a lot easier. Ah, too far.
These nuts are a half-inch nut, half-inch spanner rather. And when you're adjusting your tappets, it's generally a good idea to use the ring spanner on these nuts rather than the set spanner if you're able to. Sometimes you don't have enough space, but I think on this one you do. And that prevents the spanner. Obviously the spanner is less likely to slip when you use the ring spanner than when you use the set spanner. Okay. Alright. So that's it basically. We're now ready to pop this back onto, or pop it onto the engine, onto the head. So we'll just get set up for that and then we will come back. Okay, for those of you who remember, a couple of videos back we put the head on and we talked about torquing these bolts and the head nuts. The head nuts. And obviously a number of weeks have gone by since then. I said I was going to do it the following weekend, and then we got distracted on the rocker arm and we never got around to doing it. So now is a good time. Obviously these nuts have now had a time, and the studs have had a time to settle, to stretch, to do what they're going to do. So we're going to take them and just check them, make sure that they are correct at 65 foot-pounds. So let's see how much they actually go. That doesn't seem right, hang on. Make sure I've got the correct setting on the... Yeah, there we go. Double check the setting on the torque wrench. Okay, so that's that one. So you'll see some of them have obviously stretched a bit and they are turning to tighten back up to 65. So there we go, we'll just check them again. Okay, so we now know all of them are at 65, which is fantastic. We can now put the rocker arm on. Okay, so we can now bring the rocker arm in and get that. Obviously we have to line up each pillar. And you may have to move them slightly just to get them to go on. The springs will obviously be tensioning them. Oh, hang on, sorry. We first need to put our push rods in. Let's get those in first. Okay, let's just talk about push rods. So, obviously this is a push rod. A couple of things about this. First thing is to make sure that they all are straight. And the easiest way to do that is to roll them along a flat surface. I've done that way back when we dismantled the engine. I know that all of these are good, but if you roll along a flat surface, you'll immediately see if it's got any sort of bends in it. Some people talk about making sure that you put the same rod back into the same hole. Look, maybe that matters on some engines, but certainly on this engine it doesn't make any difference whatsoever. Similarly, the cam followers, people talk about making sure that you put the same cam follower back on each one. Again, I've never bothered with that and it's never caused me a problem. So look, it's up to you. If you want to do it, it's probably not a bad thing. It can't hurt, let's put it that way. But I've never bothered. So first thing we'll do, we'll just pop a squirt of oil down each hole just to make sure that there's plenty of oil down there inside that cam follower. You remember when we put the cam followers in, we've kind of filled them with oil anyway, so there should be plenty in there, but again, we'll just do it again to make sure. These go with a rounded edge down, that sits inside the cam follower cup, and the top is obviously a recess which the rocker sits on. Okay. Now, one of our viewers talked about we shouldn't have turned the engine over because those cam followers might have fallen out. Obviously, that's a good point. They might have. Ours are quite tight, and I think that they'll be absolutely fine. And as we can see here, all of these is pretty much sitting where I'd expect them to be, so I don't believe that that's been a problem, or that is a problem. Final job really, or the final point, just fill these with oil. Obviously when you put the rockers in, that'll all get squeezed out, but at least then you know there is a film of oil in there for lubrication and keeping that nice and lubricated. Right, so let's try this again. We'll get our rocker arm lined up. Bit of a fiddle, but eventually it will go down. Now we need to make sure that we get each of these into the push rod. And as we push this down, they should line up. Okay. Okay. Just get the washers and nuts on, get them started, and then we will check them all again. So these nuts, it looks like these nuts have gone on in both ways at different times in their life, so it's difficult to tell which way is the right way. Ultimately, again, it probably doesn't matter. I'm probably just being pedantic, but I like to make sure that the shoulder on the nut goes down. Okay. Right, so we'll just check all of them again. And what I might do is actually extend these screws a bit because they all seem to be a bit short. So we'll just do that quickly. Oh, wrong screw. In fact, I wonder. I'm gonna leave that. I'm gonna tighten these down a bit first, and then we'll check those screws. Now, there's no torque setting for these nuts. They don't need to be torqued, but they do need to be quite firm. So what we'll do is we'll just get them started so that they're just putting pressure on the spring washer, and then we will tighten them in sequence, tighten them down basically. Now what we want to do is make sure that each of these pillars is actually meeting the face on the head. You can see, I can see that these three are not yet, so we'll just bring this one down a bit and then work backwards again. Now this nut seems to be, oh no, that's going, okay. What I'm seeing is that's now putting pressure on the valves. I can see this valve's gone down, that one's just starting to go down, and these are very loose because our screws are still sticking out a long way. Make sure that all of these are in. The push rods are all lined up, and now we can just tighten this down. The spring washers will do their job and keep prevent the nuts from loosening, but you do want to make sure that they are reasonably tight. Okay, right, I'm happy with that. And now what we'll do is just bring these down a little bit because they are currently way too short. Okay, there we go. That one's actually touching, so that one's fine. That one's loose. And that one's loose. And those two are both tight. So all of those are now tight. I would say too tight. None of them are rocking. But we also don't know exactly where the engine is at the moment in terms of the timing. So we're going to leave it like that for now. We can't tell, we don't have the flywheel on yet, so we can't really tell reliably how the engine is timed. So we're going to leave it like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the tappet cover gasket, the tappet cover on without the gasket, just to keep everything nice and clean. Yeah, it's basically to protect everything. Obviously we'll pop that off again when it comes time to set the tappets. But look, that's basically it for now. The next job I'm going to do is there are all kinds of fittings and not fittings, like Welsh plugs and stuff that now need to be fitted onto the head. So that'll probably be the next video. There's a plate that goes on the back here. There's a Welsh plug that goes in here. I think there's an oil pressure or something comes in here. The point is we're going to complete the head in the next video. In fact, the head and the block as much as we can, with some of the peripheral stuff that we haven't really dealt with yet. And that will essentially complete the engine. And then the engine can go onto, what we'll do is we'll put the engine onto the engine crane, take it off the engine stand. Then we'll work on the flywheel and the clutch and get all that sorted out. And then the engine will be ready to go back onto the tractor, which will be basically the final stage of the engine restoration. Okay, so look, I think, well, hopefully that was interesting and informative. The key thing really is getting those bushes. Look, I'm not 100% convinced that those bushes really needed to be replaced. Now that I've got the new ones in and reamed out, they're probably just as good as the ones that were in there. So it probably didn't really need to be done, but at least now I know I've got new bushes all the way through here, and then of course I've got two new rocker arms here, and I'm happy with that. All the adjusting screws can be turned easily, all the lock nuts have been cleaned up. I'm happy with that. The rocker shaft itself is in good condition, a couple of little marks on it, but nothing more than you'd expect of an engine this age, and so I'm happy with that as well. So look, we'll leave it there for this week. Thank you for joining us. Hope you have a good week, and of course we'll see you on the next video. Cheers for now.